Hey.
How's everybody?
How's it going?
It's going good. I'm just hanging out here at the burn, watching birds. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Yes.
While we're waiting on everyone loading in there, what are the highlights? What are you hearing right now?
Yellow warbler, warbling vireo, song sparrow, house wren, orchard oriole, Baltimore oriole, of course red-winged blackbird. There's plenty of those here.
So of those that you just mentioned, and we were talking about this at one of our Dunes Festival trips we were on about mnemonics and all the sounds. You're hearing all the sounds and how it's amazing how everyone has different mnemonics sometimes for different birds. So the birds that you're hearing, what is the mnemonic? Can you pronounce it? Mnemonic that you're using for some of those species?
I use sweet, oh so sweet for yellow warbler. I know some people say something else, but and I don't know about the rest of them. I just think I've learned it by ear, so I don't really pay much attention to the mnemonics part of it. But I know yellow warbler is something that when I first heard it, it was like Clint taught me, sweet, oh so sweet. So it really stuck with me, and it is. I mean, it's singing right now back there. You can hear it. But I think some people use something different. But I think mnemonics are great for, especially with people that are just starting to learn. And I know with one of the things I do use it for is flycatchers, like Fitzbue for willow, and free beer for alder. So it is useful for especially stuff like that that you just don't, you'll hear it and they all look alike. So you hear it and then you start to say, oh yeah, that's a willow flycatcher, which we also have here. And then peewee, right? Sings its own name.
There you go.
Phoebe is another one. Sounds like Phoebe sounds like it's singing its own name as well. But yeah, mnemonics are great, but I don't have
Sounds like we need a whole hour. We should just dedicate to bird sounds and everybody's mnemonics that they're using, and have a little competition. Then bring a whole bird calling contest too, a little element to the Birders Hour. But we won't do that. We won't do that today in this month here. A different theme here. I do want to thank everyone that's either watching either live on Facebook or has joined us for our annual Hoosier Birders Hour. I can't believe it's the last day of May. Where did first it seems like May has just been a blur. It's gone by so fast. We've had so many great events, so many great birds. I can't believe I've actually been wearing this hoodie now for 31 days. So I guess I'll change it tomorrow at the end of the month and segue over to the breeding season. And so a lot of stuff still going on. I want to first off introduce a couple of our guests that have joined us for this month's Hoosier Birding Hour, as we're looking at breeding birds, some of the unique breeding birds in Indiana, where to find those. We got folks that have traveled the state, know where some of these specialty species are. First up, we got IS members Jeremiah Oden and Bill Sharkey and Shari McCollough. Do you guys all want to say hi?
Hello.
Where are you guys all reporting from today?
I'm reporting
from my house. Yep.
Which is?
I'm at the burn, of
Hamilton.
course.
We're still learning to talk over one another. I'm in Hamilton County.
Yep, I'm out here in Boone County.
Okay.
And I'm in Montgomery County.
And yeah, Shari, you're reporting live. You got enough signal strength to be at the Lye Creek burn, which we've been hearing a lot about. And obviously, we have a lot of field trips and not always breeding birds, but definitely some specialty birds that folks come and visit there. And we'll kind of talk a little bit more about those. First off, I wanted to give a couple quick updates before we get going. And one is obviously right there behind me. You see that wood thrush. And so We just saw yesterday, if you're on Facebook and got a chance to see that the very first wood thrush is part of our big, wide population level study of wood thrush conservation movements, looking at their movements from the tropics, not just in Indiana, 600 tagged birds all over the eastern United States. And the first one in Indiana was just tagged yesterday at our Mary Gray Bird Sanctuary. And so you can visit indianaaudubon.org/chasing melody, learn all about the project. If you want to support it, get opportunities to see some of the bandings and such that are going on. And so it's really cool as we'll be able to track these birds. And what I think is so cool is that as we track these birds, we know that they winter in Costa Rica, Guatemala, Belize, but we'll actually be able to figure out where Indiana birds winter. And so we can look at what are those ancestral wintering grounds these birds are heading to. So if we're looking to help with our conservation dollars, they'll give us new insight into that. And so I'm really excited that we've been kind of talking about it now for almost a year now that we're finally set forth in motion and we're getting tags on birds. So we're pretty excited about that. And in addition to getting a chance to see some of those bandings, we got a lot of field trips coming up too. And even just this upcoming, not this weekend, but the next weekend, if you want to go to see Kirtland Warblers up in Michigan with Whitney Yorger, we have our annual Kirtland's trip. I think there's like 2 spots left if you still want to try to join in last minute. Otherwise, we got a series of other field trips going on through the summer and some really exciting ones too that they'll be releasing soon for the fall. But most recently, we'll have coming up just after July 4th, that first weekend in July at Prophetstown. And so some prairie birding, dick thistles, Henslow sparrows, bobolinks. They'll be searching all throughout there near Lafayette. And then we segue to the Mary Gray Bird Sanctuary August 10th, and that's the Hummingbird Migration Celebration. If you haven't seen it there, you can join nearly 500 folks that come to see hummingbirds up close. There's hummingbird banding and lots of different activities that take place all throughout the day, 1 hour east of Indianapolis. So mark your calendars for those, and you can visit the indianaaudubon.org/events site to see all of the upcoming trips and activities. And a lot of these are going to take you to some really special spots in Indiana because so much of Indiana lies within not just the core breeding range of some really cool birds, but we're on the edge of ranges, so many different species there. And so we've been kind of brainstorming, and we want to hear from you guys as well. Put it in the comments, what are some of the species that you look for that are nesting in Indiana in the summertime? We're looking at kind of the months of June and July. And it's a short breeding season. When you look at the IAQ field notes, if you look at fall, it's like August through November. Summer, June and July. And even then, in our minds, that summer breeding season is even shorter as the first fall migrants are already starting to come. I think Ken Brock used to say that the summer breeding season in his mind was 10 days long. And it was like by June 7th, the last of the spring migrants have finally left. And by June 17th, you can find the first solitary sandpiper already coming down from the Arctic. But in that season, in June and July, there's some really cool breeding birds. And we were brainstorming beforehand some of our favorites. And so what we're going to do is kind of roundtable that on top of any comments and questions that you guys have about some of the unique breeding birds that we have in Indiana and where to find them. And so, Jeremiah, I'm just going to throw things off to you. When we're looking at some of the unique birds, what's the first one you think of?
Well, since I work at Grissom Air Force Reserve Base, Upland Sandpiper.
Why
so I get to,
Uplands and why Grissom?
well, historically, at least for the last 12 to 14 years, they've bred in all the grasslands just south of base there. So I get to see them every morning if I just shoot over and right before or after work. So yeah. And
When do they arrive?
Earliest I've had them at Grissom was April 7th, I think this year, which I think was the second earliest in the state's history. I think Gary Bowman had an April 1st bird way down south a number of years ago. But yeah, early April, most of the time, mid-April is when they show up. And by late April, there's for sure always uplands there. Up to 6 birds, I think it's been my high count at Grissom, but there's still 2 or 3 other places that are great for upland sandpiper as well. And they're definitely more of a central flyway bird, central part of the country. So we have a pretty decent population to be as far east as we are.
Yeah, certainly. If you take a look at that, here we got the eBird kind of status and trends maps, and so clearly, upland sandpipers are a central bird of the grassland areas. If you're prowling around out in the Black Hills, you're going to see these things getting flushed from the grasses, and a much more common bird. Nesting wise, look, there's a little bit movement through some of the plains in northern Illinois, and then it is pretty unique. It's got a pretty restricted range. Right there in what looks like kind of northwestern to kind of central Indiana. We kind of zoom in and we actually just focus just on that breeding season and drop that away. This is where I really find is not only do you have the eBird maps where I can go and see real-time sightings, but by cross-checking with these status and trends, kind of historically, this is where they're going to be. So if I'm just looking for the habitat, then I might be looking for these birds, and I may not know the exact, county road crossroads. It kind of gives me an idea of where to go. And so as we zoom in here and look at that, these kind of the darkest red areas there, that would be the Grissom area, correct?
That's right. And then so in space like the Snyder sod farms up north in Lake County, in 92, there's a high count of 27 birds there, which isn't a lot of upland sandpipers for Indiana. But yeah, if you get up into that K Sands area, that darkened area up there on the top left of the screen, you can get some pretty good birds up there. Tippecanoe County is always good for uplands as well. Just northwest of West Lafayette, there's been some pretty good spots right there on, was it State Road 18 and 900 West are always good spots for uplands.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah,
it's my favorite song of any bird I've ever heard. So that's why I like upland so much.
Yeah, very vocal, the shorebirds. And so, yeah, these guys that are driving around these county roads look like, north of Lafayette and the White County is they're listening for that, call that they give. And oftentimes they will alight on a telephone pole or fence post for you to see. So, look, we can cross check from that, the old data there, the trends, and look at kind of the current sightings. And so we got a lot up here. We get up a little north there, you start getting to that kind of Kankakee Sands area, and even look at that along that whole kind of Kankakee River area. Schaefer Generating Plant had some, and there's of course. Would you say this is probably one of the most reliable spots in the state to see it?
Yeah,
Jeremiah,
I would sure think so. I think historically there's one, Hancock County, like the Mount Comfort Airport, just east of Indy. The oldest report there is from 76. So they've been at least in that area for a long time. So I would say, I think Grissom's maybe a less expansive area. So it's maybe more concentrated, the grasslands. So probably easier to find there, because I've definitely seen them more at Grissom than I have Mount Comfort. But both spots, especially for Indy goers, it's a short drive to either one of those, and both spots are reliable.
Yeah, and so the big key similarity is that we have airfields, and so along those runway areas where they're maintaining some big open grass, you need a lot of big habitat for these birds. They're not going to be in the small little grassland plots, and so that's where these sites are often good. I bet you there's probably some historical, even Indy airports and other airports around the state where they're going to find them. But if we segue that to kind of that breeding season, so if they look at just June and July, we kind of peel away, and we're back in those kind of traditional areas that the eBird trends map was showing. So if you still want to see it, you're going to want to be up there in the Grissom area, or up in the K Sands north through White County. Seems to be the best areas to find them. What I didn't have, if I go back real quickly to that map from this spring, is take a look at a lot of these increase in Marion County sightings this year. And we click on a couple of these other ones, and they actually they weren't on the ground, and so they are a bird that's also vocal at night. And so some of our nocturnal flight stations, as part of our Echoes in the Night Sky project, has been recording these. And I think on some of these, like this one here that Robin Jansen had of her house, it's like the first Marion County record in several years now. And these are all being recorded at 2 a.m. flying towards Grissom in the middle of the night. So real cool birds and kind of real cool range maps to kind of see where to find them. So it seems like the bottom line, though, Jeremiah, that if they want to see an upland sandpiper, just get hold of you, and you'll be able to give them a little better eyes on it, and with less chance of little security hassles too.
Absolutely. Yeah. caveat to that at Grissom, Mount Comfort's a little bit different. If you go there to Grissom, don't start taking pictures of all the airplanes and the base. Of course, the security, both the state prison and Grissom knows they're rare birds, they're uncommon, so people go there to take pictures, but don't show up and start taking a bunch of pictures of the airplanes. It doesn't go so well. But I'm in contact with all the security forces guys. They know that, hey, it's a normal thing, and it's been a decade of people doing that. So yeah, I'm on Facebook. Anybody can feel free to reach out. I can peel off and join you anytime to help find them. I'm great with that.
Let's do another bird.
Brad,
Another unique bird.
Brad,
Bill.
could you do something? Could you do something first? Could you take us from the entry page to eBird to that abundance map by step? I think that would be useful for people to be able to understand how to get there.
Holy crap. Oh, sure, yeah, we can do that.
Is that too many steps?
No, it's not. No, it's
19 steps.
actually it's one of those that I will just quickly Google in and often go right to it from Google. There are steps that we can get there, and so what the big key is that it's the button that a lot of people don't even realize. And so if you're seeing the screen I'm sharing here, usually you're kind of playing around with the explore function, and that's where you're kind of interfacing with eBird the most. And then of course you have your own little My eBird where you submit. But here on the desktop version, I'm in the science section. And there's so much science data that the Cornell's database is now providing for, not only stuff that's being funded by eBird and Cornell, and then other partner projects like Nature Conservancy, where they're doing modeling of things where they can actually advise, landowners when to flood your field based on modeling of the data of the birds rather than actual sightings. And so we're using that. And you scroll down here and eBird status and trends. And so we can enter in the species names, and depending on the amount of data, we can look at the different seasons. We can look at some of the videos and kind of put some of these in motion. Otherwise, some of the species are a lot simpler. So, for example, we just did Upland Sandpiper, and how about we do another one?
Why don't we have Shari go next?
Okay.
I want to show off the burn.
Okay. Well, I think one of the most interesting birds that we have nest here that are a pretty dependable species to see here at the field are sedge wrens. We have other birds, but I think that's one of the species that Clint was most proud of. He did a major part of the property on the east side was kind of designated for that species alone, like certain kinds of grasses that they like and things like that. Now they have two nesting periods, from what I understand, a spring and fall. We've had them both here, spring and fall. Sometimes we've had just fall. So
Shari, it's an absolutely fascinating, because you just mentioned the two breeding seasons, and when I pull up the status and trends map, again, it's like uplands. It's certainly it's a little more western or grassland species that invades right into northwest Indiana. And if we drop out the yellow, the kind of migration period, and we just focus on that breeding, you're right there on the edge, southern edge of that core breeding. But I had never even realized it till I look at this now. Look at a bird that's really dependent on that wet habitat that surrounded the entire Kankakee Valley. And that really is a hot spot for finding breeding birds here, for finding at least sedge wrens. And you would be somewhere down here, kind of not quite in the main area that's being analyzed by eBird. But we can pull up the actual maps, and we can pull in there closer to the burn. I bet you, would that be, there's a burn right there. So yeah, looks like that's lots of summer sightings. And when do you typically, are you hearing them now? Do you hear them later in the year, Shari? You're on mute, Shari.
okay. I don't know how I got muted. I apologize for that. Yes, so I just had a couple singing. I had a Montgomery County Soil and Water come out and do a roundabout with me about over invasive species and stuff. And we had two singing up in the front of the field there on the east side, where they usually I find them the most, but I haven't heard anything today. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I took a walk out in the middle of that field that I wouldn't have a couple pop up. Last year in August, I had a meeting with the NRCS and we had singing sedge wrens everywhere in the field. I mean, they were just everywhere. So yeah, it's just a really cool bird to have around, and definitely to have, you know, dependent on this place for nesting and raising young. So neat bird.
What's so cool is that is you can be walking in a prairie area and through the entire month of June, and you have like I got a handle on here's all the birds that are breeding here this year. And then it can be like, you know, after July 4th and shorebirds are already on the move, and you're really not even, you know, the crickets are calling, the birds have really quieted down, and yet suddenly a sedge wren shows up, and it's not just random, like he's on territory now and for the next couple weeks. And so there's kind of this breeding dispersal where they do one round here and then they'll do another round completely somewhere else. And I think that happens with more birds than we realize. And there's been some studies with Modus, with Kirtlands. They're moving and doing a second brood, sometimes 15, 20 miles away from where they had a territory. But there may be so much overlap, like you're walking in the woods and you don't know, you know, is this pea we knew? Was he here 2 weeks ago? So there's probably a lot of other species doing this, but I think it tends to be most notable in the sedge wrens in the breeding season, where they will pop up randomly on a different location, different date.
I think it's interesting too that Clint had told me that they build a dummy nest. I thought, and I just thought that was so cool that they'll build an extra nest, but then actually use another nest to lay their eggs and raise their young. So one of the things are too, they are very vocal and they're not shy. Like they'll get right on top of something and sing. Yeah. You know, their little, I don't even know, it's kind of an interesting song they have. But for such a tiny little bird, you know, they really got a big mouth. Pretty easy to find, but we're very happy to have them here at the Lye Creek Burn.
Yeah, such is life if you're a wren. Big mouths there.
Yeah, like house wren.
I was just hearing a dispute on my back porch with some house wrens just the other day. But obviously sedge wrens are the much more unique and interesting ones to find. And so, you know, if you're going to the Lye Creek Prairie Burn, first off, Shari, tell us a little history of that site. You're there, you're doing some management of the work on there, and birders have been visiting for more than just sedge wrens there. But I'm going to zoom in on that location, but tell us exactly where it is and what it is.
Okay, well, it's 83-acre wetland and prairie located a little bit, I guess it would be on the north side of Montgomery County. Clint Murray, the original owner of the property, purchased the property back in 2006, and in 2008 enrolled it in the Wetland Reserve Program through the NRCS, and that's been managed through them with a conjunction with NRCS. I should say Clint was doing the work, but they help with the management practices, advisement on how to treat invasives. And if you have goals in mind, they help you kind of manage the property to make your dreams come true, so to speak, by suggesting certain types of grasses, or if you wanted hardwoods or whatever. But here we really like the wetlands and prairie, and that's what we're going to try to keep and, you know, management practices that way, which is yesterday I was spraying and removing cottonwoods, which we have a pretty significant line of old cottonwoods here that spread seeds all over the place. And then giant, what is that? Poison hemlock, that big, looks like an overgrown Queen Anne's lace. Been kind of taking that out. So, but yes, it's a really unique property. We're surrounded by nothing but farmland. It's all drained. It's all tiled. You know, all the fence rows are gone. So this property provides a really unique place for birds to not, you know, it's provides stopover for like migration birds that come through and use it to bathe and preen and rest. and eat, but it also provides great habitat for birds like, that enjoy the prairie and wetter parts of the field. We get rails that move through here. We've even had nesting spotted sandpiper here, woodcocks, just some cool stuff. So it's just a really neat property that is, I call it, Clint coined the phrase an oasis for birds. It really is an oasis for birds. So, and I just think it provides a unique, it's just a unique place in the middle of just kind of like nothing but farm field, which doesn't provide much for birds. The gentleman next to me that owns the part of the woods is also involved with Montgomery County Soil and Water. His grandfather owns the property. So we're talking about, I was telling him how beneficial it is and how many breeding birds that actually take advantage of those woods over there. We're going to try to really manage the woods a little bit better and get rid of some of the things we don't need in there. So it's a big vision, really. It's going to take time and effort, but if without a vision, you can't make things happen, right? So
yeah,
we're trying
to
do.
Hear.
Yeah. And the property is open. It's open to, nature lovers, birders, people that like to enjoy nature, always here, welcome to come. I'm working on a small trail system so people can, easily be able to walk the property and not have to worry about fighting a bunch of grasses and things like that. Not only that, I really don't want to spread things around. So we kind of want to keep people on one place. So, but a lot of things in the works. Burn plan is in the works for the property now. It's part of the management practices. So, but anyway, things are happening. And I did want to thank those of folks who have helped donate, money to some of the projects we've got going on here. First was Clint's memorial bench, and now we have our parking lot that's much needed here for the property that is part of a GoFundMe that is working its way up there. So I wanted to thank folks for that.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Whitney, we'll put a little link in the comments there for folks that are interested in learning more about that. And a lot of us remember visiting the site years ago when Clint owned it, and it was the go-to spot. I remember over 20 years ago pulling up, and there was what then was an old codger 20 years ago with big old boots, and he had a kind of an oversized coat. And he was meeting me as a college kid to show me Smith's long spurs. And I wanted to see some pumpkin bellies out there. And sure enough, I got my lifer that day with him. And that was many years ago. And still people visiting today to see those pumpkin bellies. And it'll be neat to see as you do some more work out there, what the breeding species that may develop and find that oasis out there. And clearly you can see in that photo, it's just surrounded by nothing but ag area. So it's got to be a draw for birds.
Definitely a plug for the beautiful LeConte sparrow as well. It's probably what's second best place in the state to see LeContes. October, November, phenomenal. Love the bird.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you. And I agree. I think, it's a big, vast property that takes a little bit of walking sometimes to find things, but right at the beginning, right where we'd like to put the parking lot, not too far from that, there's a nice stand of blue stem. And there's been, historically LeConte sparrows in there. A couple years ago, we had 2 different birds in there, and in just a matter of a couple days, we could identify that by photographs. The birds were different. You could see the birds' feathers were different, and they were in different stages of plumage. So, but yeah, and they can be found really anywhere in the field. It's just, you have to be dedicated to the walk.
Sounds like the makings of a sparrow walk at the Light Creek Burn later.
Absolutely. Yeah, Nelson's has been recorded here too. Clint had Nelson's here. We have good habitat for Nelson's. It's just, kind of reliant on that time of year, like when they're coming through, it sometimes can be super dry. But he's got pictures. You can find them on eBird. Has been reported here before. So Henslow sparrow.
Why is it whenever Jeremiah's on, the talk always moves to sparrows?
That's
He's
the
a
only thing
sparrow.
I'll say about sparrows. I'm done.
Let's shift though. We've done we've done some Western birds. Bill, do you got something that's not a Western bird?
Sure, Brad. Can you pull up the Yellowwood State Forest for me? And I want to see worm-eating warbler, please.
Oh, there's a good one. Yeah, we can let's go to
So I
Warbler.
picked a couple of warblers and one of my favorite birding spots to discuss. And Lucas Hollow is a specific location within Yellowwood State Forest. An excellent spring migrant visit. It has consistent worm-eating warbler nesting occurring, and it also has a lot of hooded warblers and cerulean warblers. In fact, I frequently run into researchers from local and somewhat distant colleges who are doing research on the cerulean warbler population in this space. But I like to go there, frankly, for the hoodeds and the worm eaters. It's basically a parking area and then a moderate trail with a couple of minor creek crossings. Think you need boots, but you'll make it through just fine. And the worm eaters tend to nest on slopes. So as you walk into this place, the trail's reasonably flat, and there's a slope up to the north side, left on your way in, right on the way out. And there are a couple of 2 tracks that run up that slope. And I typically walk partway on each of those and listen for the worm eaters. It's a good opportunity to learn their song versus a chipping sparrow, which is similar. Different habitats, so you don't run into chipping sparrows there very often, but I think it's still helpful to learn to listen for both of those. But the hollow is a beautiful place. It's wooded with some open space within the woods. It's also got a decent pine stand in it, so you get a good variety of birds. My only caution is that it is a good turkey hunting spot, so you need to stay out during turkey season. I typically go just before turkey season starts. The wormies, the hoodeds, and the ceruleans should all be there and singing at that point. But you'll also pick up other good warbler species during that walk and some other passerines. And Brad's pulled that up. You can see the reports. I'm trying to stare at this for a second and see exactly where that spot is. So that's the general Yellowwood State Forest. And if we go, yeah, Brad, if you go to that TC Steel you just popped up, it gives me a better sense for where I am. So the TC Steel Historic Site is the only place you get a cell signal in this area, so it's a good place to start. And Brad, if you go down to just above Crooked Creek State Park, there's a red pin, big hotspot pin right there. That is Lucas Hollow. So a lot of places to bird around there, so a good place to go and spend a day. The road, and I'll let Brad run through that, but pretty good list of birds.
6 of them.
There we had Kentucky this year. We had several blue wings. I missed black-throated blue there. I've had black-throated blue right along the trail. But the wormies are not far off the main trail. So watching the 2 tracks and doing a little hiking up the hill, you've got a good chance of seeing worm eating. And frankly, it's the best hooded warbler place I've found in the state. They will literally be at your feet singing constantly as you walk along that trail. Very enjoyable.
Wow.
I like that. At my feet.
At your feet, photographer. Yes.
That's intriguing.
Right. And there are birds that, especially the hoods, there's no reason to bother them because they're very active and they're competing with each other there for nesting spots. And so they're moving around quite a bit. And it's just to me, a nice place to bird. And I don't remember if I'm in Brown County there or Monroe County, but a really good spot in Yellowwood in general. I've also had worm eating singing in the that I could hear in the TC Steel parking lot. I have not hiked those trails around there a lot looking for birds because I find a better concentration in Lucas Hollow. But you can also do that. It's just generally a really good spot for Indiana breeding warblers, and not ones that I see typically in the Indianapolis area where I live.
Mhm. You know, and if you cross-check that with that eBird trends, I mean, it just is centered right there. It looks like it's just Brown County. Like you should be able to just go there and you're just going to kick them off the trail as you describe your hoodies too.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll warn you when you drive the roads around there and listen for them, you will run into chipping sparrows. I've missed birds that I thought I had because they were chipping sparrows before. Brad, I appreciate you walking us through this map system and the abundance. That's something I wasn't familiar with. I would love to use that going forward. So I appreciate your patience in taking us through that.
Yeah, I love it
It
too.
really-
You can see it all the
Yeah.
way through the Hoosier National too.
Yeah. So if you turn off everything but the breeding season, Brad, I think it shows a significant concentration now, where you can see these birds. We are outside of turkey season, so it's a good place to go for a hike. And those three birds, and probably Kentucky warbler as well. So you've got 4 cerulean, Kentucky worm eating, and hooded that should be in that area. And it's not a terribly difficult hike.
No. And I remember for years just driving through Brown County State Park, and because it's such an accessible drive, you can access so much of the park via the roads, and again you can listen for the sounds of the worm eating. But that is one of those locations, because of some of the different mode space and like the A. Martin Lodge, you are going to get chipping sparrows mixed in, and so you got to get kind of farther back in the park, campgrounds near the nature center, where you can be a little more confident what you're hearing down that slope is a worm eating.
We also had a possible breeding pair broadwing hawk in that space this year. I'm curious to go back and see if they're still there.
We go here just to traditional breeding. Yes, you can see all throughout that area. And then if we expand out, too many. Yeah, in kind of through the Hoosier National, probably just isn't as birded as much, where the eBird trend shows just the trends that it's probably in there. I'm curious about, you notice there's kind of a northern identified area. And I don't know what this would be. I assume the Sugar Creek Valley. Is that what that would be? We go here. I guess, yeah, there are sightings here. Look at that. Pine Hills.
Really?
And Turkey Run. So
That
it's
makes
like
sense.
close.
Tur-
So
yeah,
and
Turkey
quite
Run
a
would
bit.
have the right habitat.
I wonder if
so-
actually nesting there and breeding there.
Well, we're good consistently here through multiple birds throughout a couple of weeks here in the month of May in Pine Hills with photographs. So this may be one of the more northern areas if you want to see worm-eating warbler. That is a worm-eating warbler. So that's a great photo of one. So yeah, there you go. Visit Pine Hills and you can get a barred out of the boot, it looks like.
Bonus barred owl.
No, I may not have even looked at that had I not looked at this eBird abundance trend to identify that. Pretty
That's
cool.
closer to home than Yellowwood, though Yellowwood sounds like you've got a lot of bonus birds in that area too. So
Shari, the Yellowwood is, the burn is worth the trip, and Yellowwood is worth the trip. Those are really good, both birding destinations where you can go spend a good chunk of a day and see some different habitat and enjoy yourselves.
yeah, I definitely would like to go to Yellowwood. Never been there before. Got to try, got to go visit.
Tell you what,
Brad,
can I pick a bird?
Yeah, please.
I got a new idea. Let's kind of shift from either the southern bird or a western bird. How about a really far southern bird that is pretty unique that you can find in Indiana, is uncountable. And here's our status and trends map for it. So if you want to find it, we can plan a good trip there. And looks like maybe we can hit up some Iguazu and some of northern Argentina. But if you're lucky enough and to see them there, then you won't need to travel to Northwest Indiana, where I'm going to actually shift to. And we look at our status and trends. Look at that. We really don't have much for this species because we're looking at exotic ranges. So we have to switch over to our traditional eBird maps. And let me do just the current year right now. And so there's our, and as you've probably seen, it's already written, I haven't referenced it, but monk parakeet is the one that I'm picking. And our exotic parrot that has been expanding and is now throughout the Caribbean, southern United States areas. A lot of the major cities get it. And as I continue northward, New York and Chicago are the main hosts of the populations that have persisted now for decades, so much so that it's an established species and it's on the ABA checklist and it is on the Indiana checklist. So many species will go to see it. And there has been in the past, let me change these dates and we do more like the past 10 years, we should be able to get some other urban sightings. If I come down to Chicago or Indy. So yeah, it looks like we get a few. Some of those are probably a little more questionable, escaped pets and such. We aren't seeing much in the way of an established population today in India. At least I don't think, right? Well, they're not seeing them with any kind of regularity.
No way.
But let me scroll up here. If you want to see a monk parakeet, we have a couple locations. What's kind of cool is that they're coming out of the Chicago population, and from there they kind of feed in Indiana, and so they'll often identify to these kind of roosting areas or feeding sites. They're known to visit bird feeders in those areas, but there's kind of three main areas if you want to see a monk parakeet in Indiana. The first area I'm going to say to go to is go all the way up to the corner of state line. And we're going to go all the way up here to where the Horseshoe Casino is. You have the Hammond Bird Sanctuary, which is right there. And as soon as you leave, there's a big bridge, the Chicago Skyway, and a lot of bridge structure that's underneath that. And so there's a lot of nesting that occurs there and next door at what they call Calumet Park. And so though these are Illinois sites, they are constantly going back and forth between the two sides. And so if you're birding up anywhere near the state line, near the Horseshoe Casino and the Hammond Lakefront Park, you good chance you can find them. The next site I'm going to go is all the way down here, this spot there, and it is the NIPSCO Griffith Power Substation. And so this is a traditional spot where a lot of bird watchers go, and what you're doing is you're getting off on 94 on Kennedy Avenue, which is exit 2, and you'll take that south all the way down here to the Hoosier Prairie Nature Reserve. And so another great birding site if you've never visited Hoosier Prairie. There's some really neat birding in that oak savanna habitat. I remember chasing a western wood pewee there years ago. And right there in that northwest corner of the Hoosier Prairie is this substation, and it's got the traditional electrical boxes and such. And so they nest in these big stick structures, and you'll see all the sticks kind of hanging out. You may not see any parrots when you first pull in. And I got a secret way to get monk parakeets. And so I'm going to just tell you guys today. And you come in there, you park in the lot, and you walk south along that gravel edge. It's kind of wet and swampy off to the west there, but you go all the way up to that southwest corner, and that's your best angle, and you'll see all the sticks. But a lot of times they're up in there, and so they don't like coming out, or they're out feeding. And so my technique is to stand there and you grab hold of the fence. It's not electrified. I've checked it. And you shake it as much as you can, and then you go. And if you do that, you'll get a little green head that'll pop out of a nest and go, what the heck is going on? And they'll check you out. And that's my secret to finding monk parakeets at the Griffith substation. One of two sites you can go. The third site, it's kind of a mess here in the map. And again, go to eBird to find this, but it's 169th Street. They're calling it the Monk Tower. Basically, there's a cellular tower there right over a couple businesses. It stands, like 150 feet high. And so if you're there on 169th Street, again, do the same thing. There's a lot of businesses, so you look a little stranger doing it there than alone out there at the substation, but it will work as well. And so 3 unique kind of urban locations if you want to add species of to your state list and you're looking for breeding birds. And they're pretty confined. I can't think of they come into Lake County, but there's literally like 2 records for Porter County. I don't think there's any records for Newton south of there. And so it's really kind of confined area. If you want to see them, either go there, but they're pretty dependable if you try. So have any of you guys gone for either 3 of you for monk parakeets?
Oh yeah.
I have went to a place that someone told me one time I was up that way. And I parked at a business. There was this big tall tower, which it might be that one cell tower you were talking about. I couldn't never get them. I couldn't see them. I mean, it looked like there was nesting stuff going on there, like maybe material or something sticking out, but I don't know, maybe they were hiding. I don't know, but I hung out there for about an hour praying that I would see one, but it's okay. I can always go back and shake the fence, clap my hands like you told me, and maybe
one.
Yeah. What's good about those monk parakeets is if you listen to the call just a little bit before, if you're not familiar with parrots or parakeets, they are loud animals, like almost like rambunctiously loud. So most of the time, if they're in the area, you'll hear them before you see them.
Yeah, they're pretty vocal, almost to like a macaw level, the way that they're screaming in that urban landscape.
Good to know. I have a question though. How did they establish? Like how did that process happen?
Boy.
It like original escape thing or what?
Well, it's kind of one of those, I think that you hear so many different stories, you don't know which one's true, from it could be, escaped pets to pet breeders that had them and released them. And I've heard so many different stories, especially Chicago, because you got, European goldfinches and other species that have been kind of loose and established in the city too, that some of that history, I think, gets lost. The biggest, thing for them is the winters, to be able to survive those winters, the urban areas where they have a little extra heat and a little extra warmth, where we've got so many cities that have had them over the years. We mentioned Indianapolis, St. Louis. They just haven't been able to get established in some of the cold winters. But with climate change and some of these, more milder winters, we'll see if some of these populations subsist, grow, or new ones even get started.
Interesting.
Hey.
Yeah.
How about we got time for one more? What's a good, unique Indiana species that we want to look at today? Something to find. Bill's got one. Bill, you went on mute.
There we go. How about Chuck Will's widow, Brad?
That's a good one. And anyone seen a Chuck Will's widow this year?
I have not.
I have.
And I haven't heard one either, because it's a lot easier to hear them than to see them.
Let's start with where. Like typically, like I know it's a southern species, but I'm not as familiar with the actual habitat. Like where would you look to find a Chuck Will's widow in Indiana?
Well, I've only had one in one place, but it is a very consistent place. And that is at Reservoir 26 in Green Sullivan State Forest near Goose Pond. And there is a good place to go and wait and listen for them. This is a bit of a trek for everybody. It's 2 hours from my house, and you're probably not going to get them until it's dark. I have heard them in this location very early in the morning, but not in complete darkness. But it was lucky I just happened to be in the area getting ready to do some other birding and check. So you can see from the map. Thank you, Brad. You can see from the map there is I'm trying to do my pins here. There is a drive into Reservoir 26. There's a gated area where you could park a car. And if you get my bearings, sorry. So we're off of 600, which is in Sullivan County. It's 200, which switches to 6 almost at the spot. 200 in Greene County, 600 in Sullivan County. And am I at 29 instead of 26? I may have my reservoir numbers.
I think it's 29
mixed up. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so Reservoir 29. Actually, at Reservoir 26, you're not going to see them because I've been in that area as well. So Reservoir 29. You see the cluster of blue dots near the reports that Brad had highlighted. you're up against that lake. Basically, you drive in off of 600. There's a decent 2-track drive. Most of those are clustered at a gate where you can park. Thank you. There's another parking lot where the current red dot is. I usually park at the gate where most of the blue dots are. I don't walk the trail that you see running along the dam. It is highly tick infested. If you want to do it, you can. The birds tend to work the area that Brad is dragging his cursor over. So I've had birds all the way. So you see 2 blue dots at 600. Those are probably not where birds were seen. But once you get onto that 2-track, some of the best views I've had are along that 2-track between the blue dot he's showing and that cluster of 5 or 6 right there. Close encounter area. The birds tend to be to the right. There's a little bit of a hollow, and then that area around a pond and the dam, and they tend to run along the tree line there and move back and forth. They are pretty reliable at this. I haven't done it this year, so apologies, but I have not missed them if I've waited long enough in the year. Brad, could you highlight that red dot and we could see some dates? So, Richard Garrett and I used to do a field trip to Goose Pond. We would always use this as a highlight. That was on Mother's Day weekend, and we had some success, but it was a bit hit or miss at Mother's Day weekend. So waiting a little bit longer is generally best. Right now would be a good time if you look at some of these dates that we're seeing from historical views. To me, it's a really neat pursuit. We've had birds flying around us on one occasion. Most frequently, they're in that tree line to the right, easily heard. They're difficult to see because, even the close encounters I've had, you might see a shadow. But the birds are there pretty consistently. And to me, this is probably the best spot in the state to get exposure to Chuck-Will's widow. And it's a fun bird. If you get to see one, they're actually really a large bird, much larger than a whippoorwill. But again, I've only had, fleeting dark views of the birds at this location.
Yeah, it's perfect you mentioned that. I'm actually guiding a couple from Washington State down there this evening. We got Henslow's this morning.
Wow.
At the crest of Eagle Creek, and now it's a life bird for them. They've been birding since '87. So yeah, I'm going to the exact spot in 3 hours.
You may see cars in the lot tonight.
Heck yeah.
It's a good bird, good location, good chance of success. It's a hard trek because you're going to be down there till 9 o'clock or 9:30 and then driving home wherever you're going. But I try to commit, once every couple of years to go down there because it's quite enjoyable.
It's beautiful too. If you're on top of that reservoir on a calm night, it's a gorgeous area of the state.
Oh yeah, I've had some absolutely calm nights where the Chuck-Will widow was kind of calm down that ravine. I could see a little light from a boat fishing in the dark, way out in the lake, and a barred owl's just caterwauling, across the lake. And it was just such a magical experience. And for folks that don't realize is that this is, as I turn this map, you are right next door to Goose Pond. So many people are, birding Goose Pond but not realize that the green, Sullivan State Forest is right there. And that this is, not only do you have all the great birds of Goose Pond, but then you have things like Chuck-Will's widow that you can stay for. And so it definitely makes it worth doing an overnight trip there, whether you're staying in Sullivan or even Linton to do that, to stay late, as Bill mentioned.
And Brad, I'm going to throw one caveat in there. That segment of 600 where all the bird sightings are is the low point in the road, and it is some of the worst gravel road, depending upon when it's been maintained. I nearly lost part of a car in there, so please go slowly. You can drive 45 miles an hour on the rest of the dirt road, but when you get near your location, please slow down and be cautious. It'll be dark and you can get in trouble. But if you go slowly, no problem.
Like Chuck-Will's widows probably live in the ravines of the road.
And worm-eating warblers are nesting in those same big holes. So,
yeah. Last thing from me, I guess, and also the reason you want to drive slowly is those Chuck-Will's widows, like a lot of other nightjars, will hang out in the road, especially right at dusk. So if you go slowly, you'll see the reflection of their eyes, and you may be able to get pictures of them just from your car lights. I know Jesse Green and them had it a month ago. They were just sitting in the road. So
Oh,
Get eyes on them. And you see, well, once you leave the Green Sullivan State Forest, it's just not a species that we have a lot of. If you look at the trends, more of a southern species and kind of mixed deciduous and conifer stands and kind of centered again in sort of like where we had that worm eating a little bit, but even farther south in the steep wooded areas. And then we can see that little outpost population of Goose Pond and the Sullivan State Forest. But then you got to really kind of get down south. And if we look at the rest of the eBird maps around here for just the last 10 years, not a lot of sightings. Seems to be traditionally some areas near Bloomington in the state forest there around both Yellowwood. And I know some areas I've been north side of Lake Monroe. We've done some search in the past, though I don't know how. Doesn't look like there is a traditional, but we still have a spot here. If you're near Bloomington, where are we at here? Oh, Allen's Creek area, if you're down there searching. So it looks like those are the main two areas, unless you're all the way down, kind of searching through some of the bigger national forest units, probably driving some of those roads at night, you may be able to encounter them. So it definitely seems like the Green Sullivan spot's the place to go if you want to see a chuck. And look at that. And believe it or not, we're actually out of time, and we had a whole list of other species. And so obviously with 420 some species being seen in Indiana, a whole lot of them breeding, there's a lot of really unique ones and really unique stories that we could kind of talk about for hours there. But there's a couple of them, but we'd love to be able to help birders find some of these more unique species. We got some of them that are a little more sensitive and rare, and we didn't get a chance to talk about some of those, such as loggerhead shrikes and how you might go about searching some of those and have be able to provide also towards some of the conservation through Indiana Audubon with those. But we'll do it again, I guess, next month. We'll look at some more species, look at some more topics. And feel free to throw in some comments if you got a species you want to know more about. We're happy to write in later, whether Jeremiah, Bill, or Shari will all be watching these comments, and we can help you find some of the species that you might be looking for, whether you're out doing it alone on the Indiana Birding Trail or on one of the Indiana Audubon field trips that we have going on. So with that, I do want to thank Jeremiah, Bill, Shari for joining me, looking at our unique breeding birds and where to find them. And I hope to see you guys on the trail shortly. And we'll see you again next month for our Hoosier Birders Hour. So thanks, everybody. And we'll see you out there.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy birding.
thank you.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.